This is Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. If you drive long haul, short haul, or heavy haul, they're here to empower and inspire women in the trades on tncradio.live. So gear down, sit back, and enjoy.
Welcome to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. We're a show that works to inspire and empower women in trucking, in the trades, and really everywhere. We tackle all kinds of topics and work to encourage women to be their very best with informative guests, experts, celebrities, and people who are champions for women. I'm Shelley and
I'm Kathy.
Every topic can be discussed on our rig. We want women to be the very best they can be, and we like to feature experts who offer guidance to women. Healthy living is something women strive to achieve but don't always attain, especially when they're taking care of other people. They tend to neglect themselves. When they're drivers, it can be an even tougher goal. Award-winning author and public speaker Judy Gaman is a healthy living expert who's been heard on Fox News Radio and the very popular Stay Young America podcast. Judy is a graduate of the George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences, as well as the School of Professional Studies. She also holds a graduate certificate in strategic management from Harvard Extension School. She shares her inspiring ideas and knowledge in her award-winning books. Judy's mission is to educate and elevate people by helping them discover their true life passions and reach their full potential while living longer, healthier, and more fulfilling lives. She's a true inspiration and advances the modern understanding of what it means to age gracefully and what it takes to live your best life. Judy is with us today, and we're excited. Welcome, Judy.
I'm so excited to be on with you two girls. I mean, this is going to be a great show. I love your energy. I think it's so awesome what you're doing.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I thought we could start with, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do to teach about health and staying young. Those are some real interesting concepts.
Well, thank you for that. I'm actually the CEO at Executive Medicine of Texas, and that kind of, that sounds like, it's kind of a person who sits in an office all day long, but it's not really. I'm very, very involved in the health and the wellness of our patients and the programs that we offer. But my journey with health and wellness really started at a young age. My mom was a nurse and she taught nursing school at night. And as a little girl, I remember taking my dolls and, it was like she was talking about, we're going to be teaching how to cast. And I'm like, oh, I've got to cast my doll. So I'd bring my doll with me and she'd be teaching all the students how to do splints and things and how to cast. And this is back when things were plaster and all that. And casting my doll, I was very, very proud of that. But my mom was a working woman, and I always grew up working and around health and wellness. And so it's really become a passion for me, even so much on the realm of longevity. How do we live longer? What are the health pitfalls for women? And we see a lot of females in the office. The name Executive Medicine of Texas is a little bit of a misnomer because you don't have to be an executive per se. You just have to be a busy individual that says, you know what, I don't have time to go through the whole HMO process and, wait 6 weeks for my next appointment and such. I need a team to help me figure out my health. So it's really become a passion. And that's really, too, why we do the Stay Young America podcast, because there's so much information out there that we all could be sharing with each other to help ourselves live longer and healthier. And women, sometimes we get the short end of the deal because we are taking care of everybody else and we forget to take care of ourselves.
Oh my goodness, yes. Women kind of put themselves last, don't they?
They do. And it's interesting. We see it time and time again. And there's this age between 40 and 60 where things are especially tough. Because your career, if you're a career woman, your career has really taken off. And this has I can't even imagine the struggles for your female people in your industry, because sometimes they're away for long periods of time. So, it compounds those stressors of, I got to take care of my family. I've got to take care of, my kids, and I've got to, and my my spouse or significant other. And then I've also got my parents over here, and they've entered a whole new realm of aging. Maybe you're dealing with a parent with dementia or heart disease, or all the things that befall people in their 80s. So this is when people are in that 40 to 60, and they're just being sandwiched in together. And the last thing on their mind is, how do I take care of myself? I'm just trying to hold my head above water and not drown here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. The amount of pressure is unbelievable. And I think that there's more pressure with women. There's so many stereotypes. And we watch these commercials that are still out there. It's like, you got to look like you're 20,
Well, and they're all airbrushed. We live in the world of filters. When people go to their reunions now, because you've only been seeing people on social media, right? And you walk in and you're like, I have no idea who any of these people are, because this is who they really are, not who the filter has created. And also you're like, man, yeah, keep the filter. But we tend to do that with ourselves. We look at ourselves and we compare ourselves to a filtered world. Mm-hmm. And we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves that way. We just have to remember that real is good. Wrinkles, well, sometimes that means wisdom. And, all these kind of things happen as we age. And some things we want to embrace and some things we don't want to embrace. We don't want to embrace the things that are going to make us die young, that are going to put us in a wheelchair or in a nursing home. There's a lot of things we can be doing to live longer, but also live healthier, because it's not just how many years you live, it's what do those years look like?
Sure. Well, when you look at pictures say, from the 1800s or even in the early 20th century, women looked old. There's got to be a way. Women are fighting this, and in terms of health, they want to feel good. Is there a way to actually put age at bay, look your best, feel your best? How do we do that?
Well, there's a couple things, and you have to start with knowing your status. And that means go in and get one of these half-day physicals, because when you go to the doctor, and this is a lot of people think, oh, I went to the doctor, I'm fine. Well, the doctor can only tell you you're fine based on whatever it is they did. So you say, oh, I had my blood drawn. Well, probably you only had a blood count and a chemistry panel, because that's pretty standard. Mm-hmm. Maybe you had your thyroid checked. You probably didn't have your hormones checked. You probably most likely didn't have any vitamin levels checked. So we walk out with a very small part of the picture, and then we extrapolate that, well, the doctor didn't tell me I had anything wrong, so I must be doing good. But again, we can only tell you what we've tested for. So if we want to really grab a hold of our health, we have to understand what our health is and what our own individual health needs are. And those vary from person to person. So it's not like you can just pick up a book and that is one size fits all, mm-hmm. or you can go to the doctor and get advice that one size fits all. You really have to know, what are your health needs and what does that look like? And I would say in your profession, there are some really interesting health needs that maybe don't befall other professions. And that's true for various professions. They have their unique things. One of them is getting enough cardiovascular exercise and not losing flexibility, because let's face it, when you're driving a truck or you're in a sitting position for long periods of time, then we see issues with circulation. We see this in our patients that are truckers. And for women, it can be an even bigger issue when it comes to hormones, because that cardiovascular workout and a lot of these stretching and all these other things that we need to be doing on a daily basis, they affect the hormone levels in our body. And, all people have hormones. I mean, I know women get the bad rap, guys are, oh, it's their hormones. Well, guess what? Guys have hormone issues too. So
yeah, right. Yeah.
If you've been around a guy long enough, they have their own set of issues.
Oh, there's nothing worse than a whining man. Oh my goodness.
Right.
That it's so true what you were saying about sitting in equipment or trucks, I guess. In where I work on a 2-week basis. So I sit in that equipment, whether it's the truck or the grader or whatever piece I'm on, for 13 hours a day. And if I'm trucking, we usually only get off the truck twice a day for half an hour for our breaks. And you go for that whole, 13 hours. It's go, go, go. And for 2 weeks at a time, all I do is eat, sleep, and work, right? And sit. Yep. So I have to, I'm turning 53 here in a couple of weeks, and I have to make myself a priority. It is too easy to make excuses and, I'm tired, or I don't have the energy. And I have no thyroid basically. So I really am tired, but I have to push myself, especially because I have varicose veins. My legs hurt. I have poor circulation. I got to wear the TED stockings and all that, the compression stockings. But I make it a priority in my own life to do yoga twice, like every other day. And on the other day, I'll hit the gym, and not for hours at a time, because number one, I don't have hours, just 30 minutes. And if I don't feel like running, well, then I'll walk uphill. Like, you don't have to, and if I don't do it, I notice how it affects me in the long run. And even though I'm tired and I push myself to do it, that's when I realize, oh my God, I'm so glad I went. It gave me energy. It helps.
Yeah. And Kathy, you're right. You just hit on such a good point, is we don't feel like doing it. Then we do it, then we feel better. So we have to do it regularly, so our brain can remember, I may not want to do this, but I know I'll feel better when I do, because it trains the brain to crave or want to do some movement. Because the longer you're away from doing that, the more the other side of your brain, it's kind of like a little angel, a little devil on your shoulder. The little devil's like, nah, you don't want to do that. You're so comfortable. But the
hardest part is getting out the door. Once you're out the door, you're fine. Right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Another problem we see in the trucking industry in general is back pain. So we see a lot of back and hip issues because of that sitting. And it's real easy to put that strain and stress. And I'm just curious for you, Kathy, because you are I would assume that when you're driving, that you probably get jolted around a bit. Is that?
Oh my God. Jolted is not the word.
Understatement?
Oh my God. Like, it is so rough. It's an open pit mine. The roads are very rough. Trucks aren't so bad because, it's how fast you drive, right? And you can avoid the holes, and it depends on how you go. But mostly I'm in the grader, and I'm the one that's smoothing the roads for the trucks. So it is really rough. A lot of this equipment isn't like it's run down, and so I get jolted a lot. And I have one of these medical, what do they call it? Oh, I forget the name of it. It's like a massager where you put your arms in and it goes up and down your spine, because my back gets so sore and so tense. Luckily, my company pays us, we're allowed $400 a year, which isn't all that much if you think about it, to get massages and chiropractors for readjustments. But I do wear a back brace, just around the whole waist, just to support, because of that jarring all the time.
Oh, yeah. Think about just the constant pressure. Runners see that on their knees, right? And you're just getting it on your spine all day long.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that you have that, and I'm glad that they have some kind of budget for that. For your female truckers, some of the best things they can do when they're not on the road is yoga or Pilates, because all of that stress and pressure and over time, it just causes so much tension everywhere. And that really helps get rid of it. And it sounds funny to say, get out of your truck and go do some yoga or Pilates.
Well, no, actually, it's funny you say that. No, because that's what I do. Like, a lot of times there's a lineup at trucks. So you have like maybe 5 minutes. Or 10 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll get out on the deck of the truck, and I'll do push-ups off the railing, or I'll do squats, or I'll do side stretches, or I'll do lunges, anything to get some circulation going. And I only started doing yoga like 6 months ago, specifically because I'm like, man, like I'm feeling it and it's rough. And I'm like, oh my God. And so I didn't want to do the traditional yoga because I got too much. I'm a kind of a high strung kind of gal. So I joined Asana Rebel only for the name.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
Because I feel like the rebel, right? But I tell you one thing, oh my God, what the difference it made is huge, huge. Now it's like I can't go without. Don't get me wrong, I'm no graceful swan. There's a lot of falling over, a lot of cussing, and a lot of wondering, how the heck do they do that? Like, my God, right? But I'm getting better.
Well, and just just doing what you're doing is going to help you with balance, because we see that when people have a long time, they have jobs, whether it's in front of a computer or whether it's, behind the wheel, they have jobs where they sit so long.
Yep.
Then over time, they also aren't using some of these muscles, which I'm sure you've noticed when you're doing some of these stances and stuff. You're like, I didn't even know I had a muscle there. But they aren't using some of these muscles in their legs that actually keep them upright or help them if they do start to fall. So we in later life see these falls, and these can happen, 50, 60. It don't have to be happening when you're 80. Your balance just isn't as good as it used to be because you're not using those muscles, all of those muscles. So yeah, I applaud you for what you are doing. And any of your listeners that aren't doing something like this, you got to. You just have to.
I was half tempted to film myself trying to do yoga just for the some giggles for the people out there, all my followers, just to see that, hey, I may not be no graceful swan. I'm still tipping over and I got a balance issue, but I'm still doing it.
You could go viral, Kathy. You could go viral.
I know, right? And I'm able to laugh at myself. That's the biggest thing. Most people, they say, oh, I can't do yoga. I'm not good. Well, I'm not good either, but I'm still doing it. I'm still trying. And I'll tell you one thing, from 6 months ago to today, I can almost do the splits now. Almost.
Oh, that's awesome.
That is
on purpose. On purpose, not one of those where you slide and you're like, oh, I can't get up. It's not one of those.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
Is there a recipe for women? I mean, we're obviously different than men. We have a lot of different challenges. I mean, our system is so cyclical. It seems like, as soon as we hit puberty, whoa, here we go. It's the roller coaster. How do women take control of their bodies and stay young and healthy and not fall apart? Because doesn't it seem that women, they live longer, but they do have a lot of health issues that maybe men don't? How do they protect themselves from that?
Well, women, especially in the last, 20 years, maybe 30 years, they've really gotten on this, I'm a life warrior path. And, I'm too tough to, and I don't want to go to the spa, or I'm too whatever. They kind of, especially, working women, we tend to think, well, I'm not one of those women or one of those girls, but it's okay to be one of those women or one of those girls. If you're tired, rest. If you haven't been for a massage, get one, because it's really good for circulation and the lymphatic system and all of this. And make sure your hormones are being checked. Menopause is no fun, but even if you get to the other side of menopause, if you don't have enough testosterone, that's where we start seeing things like dementia, fatigue, a lot of loss of muscle mass, and we don't want to be frail. And we have to do certain things to make sure that we don't get frail. Healthy, no one gets healthy on accident. It really takes purpose and drive, and you find out what works for you and kind of go with that. Like for me, I know that I can say I'm going to eat greens every day, right? Oh, I'm going to have a salad. I'm going to make sure I'm getting all these greens. But the reality is, in my 50 years, I probably think I have thought I ate more greens than I had in a week, pretty much every week of my life. So I started drinking athletic greens. They're called athletic greens, and they're basically mix them up with cold water. And I just kind of start my day that way. And I was shocked how, just doing something as simple as that. And there's lots of products that are out there that are good. It's a friend of mine in medicine. She's a female physician. She had told me that she started doing this. She took a look at her diet and said, I know what I'm supposed to eat, but it's just not a reality for me. I'm not going to do that because it doesn't always fit into my day. So have a little grace with yourself and find out, okay, I know I need to eat greens. How do I do that? Or I know I need to take supplements. We think everybody should be on vitamin D. I mean, the whole country has a vitamin D deficiency. I mean, it's a crisis, and we really saw that crisis in the middle of the pandemic.
Sure. And
people that were low on vitamin D to begin with, who ended up getting COVID, ended up in the ICU. And some of the studies got buried. All the doctors saw them because they were in the medical journals. But there were a lot of studies where they went into these ICUs, and depending on what stage they were in, they could put some of them on high dose vitamin D, and they left the hospital. And some of the other people, they just didn't recover. They got into the cytokine storm and the inflammatory process, and they got long COVID or they died. Mm-hmm. So we know that there are things that are wrong with us as a society, like low vitamin D. But just doing some of those simple things, just saying, it's okay if I take supplements. I need them. I'm going to be real with myself that I don't eat the way I should. One of the big things is to, avoid artificial sweeteners at all costs. I mean, they kill your gut biome. We now know that when your gut biome is all jacked up, you end up having all kinds of mood swings. It makes bipolar disorder worse. Just take some small steps. Find out what works for you and take small steps.
Right.
I know, Shelley, you and I have had a conversation before about the importance of sleep.
Yep.
And women, we're the world's worst because our mind can't shut off.
Oh man, that's so true.
We lay there and think of 20 more things we got to do. And then depending on how many, how bad the urge gets, we might just get up and do them.
Oh,
I did that this morning. That's so funny. I fell asleep at 1, and at 5 o'clock, I was up, and it's like, oh my God, Kathy, go to sleep. You don't have to be up for a bit. And you think I could go back to sleep? Because then all of a sudden I started to think what I could do. And I ended up packing up a box for Columbia, and I packed up a whole bunch of books, and I'm like, oh yeah. So I slept 4 hours.
Yep. We do it to ourselves. Yeah, we definitely do it to ourselves. I don't know if you girls have seen this, but if you haven't, you've got to go to YouTube and look it up. The difference between a man's brain and a woman's brain. And it's this guy, he's on the stage, he's got these two heads on the stage, and he walks from one to the other, and he's like explaining how the man's brain works. And he's like, the man, he has a box for everything. So he goes into this box, and then he goes over to the woman's brain, and he's like, you got to watch the whole thing. I'm not doing it justice. And he says, but the woman, everything's connected. So you say this, and it goes to this, and it goes to that. And he's like, it's the funniest thing you've ever seen. I promise you should probably cross your legs when you watch it so you don't pee on yourself. It is hysterical. And it's all 100% true. We are like that.
Sure. I have been told by men, my mind's so scary that they wouldn't want to go in there alone.
I've had don't
so
bother
funny.
walking a mile in my shoes. I'd be too boring. Spend 30 seconds in my head. It'll freak you right out, man.
Oh, it's funny.
Seconds. Yeah.
So what should women be asking their doctors? I know that today it seems like doctors only take maybe 10 minutes. They do a basic panel. and they provide a baseline, which doesn't seem very comprehensive to see what's really going on in somebody's body.
Well, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, it's really a shame that we've kind of gotten to a place in healthcare where there's not that relationship with the doctor. And I think that was kind of the premise between our partners that started executive medicine. You know, they were like, we want to treat people like we would treat our family. And we would never, ever, if our kid came to us and said, you know, Dad, I've got this issue and I limp, I do this, you know, you'd jump all over that. You'd have all these exams, you'd be figuring it out. Or, you know, if your mom said, well, I stand up and I faint, boy, you'd have every test known to man because they want to make sure, you know, we're going to rule everything out. So, but that's not really how most modern medicine's happening. You know, it's kind of like, come in, tell me your problem. You got 5 minutes. Let me give you a Band-Aid. By the way, the doctor's got one hand on the door and not going to make another appointment for that, but you got to wait 2 weeks because don't have time to see you today. Yeah. And it's kind of like this rat race. And we have seen people that think, I just have to retire. I just can't do this anymore. And I'm just thinking like this one attorney, he was like, I just have to retire. I don't know. I've lost my joy, blah, blah. And he went on. Well, as part of our exams, we do something called a carotid Doppler. And we're actually looking at the carotid arteries and we're looking for interval thickening, a stroke risk and all that. Well, it's right next to the thyroid. So during that time, some little blip came up. And so the sonographer kind of looked over at the thyroid and they had a thyroid nodule. And that thyroid nodule was this very particular type. They were able to get it out, but it was a very particular type that releases all these crazy hormones. Well, they had been to their doctor, and their doctor was like, oh, I guess you're just tired. Maybe you need antidepressants. You know, maybe you're depressed. And so it went down this whole road. And this had been going on for like maybe a year and a half where it was, you know, I went on antidepressant, I did this and nothing's working. And so get that thing out. And it was like a new lease on life. The guy's like, I'm not retiring. I'm taking in a partner and we're expanding. And like life just came back to this person. It was something that probably wouldn't have been picked up. Yeah. You know, right. Because that just wasn't part of that 5-minute exam they were getting. And I mean, I could go on and on and on with stories like this. Like this is a very interesting one. We had a 54-year-old who was an entrepreneur and he traveled a lot. And his mother actually was his personal assistant. He had all these hundreds of employees, but his mom was his personal assistant. And she's very good at it too, by the way. But he was on a plane and he opened up a magazine. He saw an ad. It was not our ad. And it was for an executive physical. And he said to his mom, look into this, find me where I need to go for this. Well, she had called all these places and interviewed them. And when she talked to us and we told her we'd do something called a virtual colonoscopy where you don't have to be put to sleep. And, you know, it's done on the CT scan and all this.
Wow.
So she said, I think this is where you should go. So we end up seeing the guy. And he could not sleep. He's like, I just feel like I got to get this done. I don't even know. He had no symptoms. He just had a nag that he really needed to get this checked out. And he came in and we did the virtual colonoscopy. And because as part of the physical, we do CT, the abdomen, chest, and pelvis. And then with the virtual colonoscopy, that's a CT that also includes the pelvis in that area. We found he had tailbone cancer.
Oh, Lord.
And he never would have known it until it would have spread somewhere. And he had zero symptoms. And he went in, he got it removed. And within 3 days, he got diagnosed and healed. They got it in time. It had not spread anywhere. And to this day, he's just, you know, great. But he kind of listened to his gut and said, you know, I think I need to get this done. And in that little voice inside. And we see that a lot. People say, I don't know. For years I've been thinking I can do this, but I really think I need to get this done. And sometimes the ones that are really thinking they got to get it done, we do end up finding things. But luckily, you know, 99.9% of the time we find it early and whatever it was is corrected. But for all your listeners, I mean, if you're out there and you have been putting off your colonoscopy, or you've been putting off, your stress test or whatever, get it done. Get it done.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Trucking Moves America Forward, or TMAF, is building a positive image of trucking by telling the story of the hardworking drivers and industry professionals who support the industry. And you can be a part of it. Learn more about TMAF and how you can join and be a part of the industry movement working to build a strong image of trucking by visiting TMAF's website at truckingmovesamerica.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and our latest channel, TikTok.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
I was speaking once, and I was speaking to a women's group, and there's probably 200 people there, and I was supposed to be talking about longevity, and I had not even had anything in there about colonoscopies. And I just got this really strong impression. And I'm like, I'm really sorry. I know you guys are having lunch, but I have to talk about something. And I just started talking about colonoscopies. and I mean, it was so bizarre. And I started talking about, colonoscopies and when you should get them done. And by the way, they just lowered the age. Now it's 45, which I'm glad, because we're seeing a lot of polyps and precancerous and cancer in the 40s. So I'm telling the story, and I said, I have no idea why I really felt like I needed to go off topic and talk about that. Well, a woman came up to me afterwards, and she said, I think you were talking to me. She said, I've been having some rectal bleeding, and I was supposed to get my colonoscopy tomorrow, and I chickened out because I wanted to come here and have lunch, and I just didn't want to have it done. So I canceled it, and I have not rescheduled it. She says, I think you were supposed to tell me this message. So I ran into that same lady, and we ended up becoming really good friends, but I ran into her again. I guess it was maybe a month. And she was crying, and she said, oh my gosh, you saved my life. I rescheduled that colonoscopy. I had cancer. It had not spread. They were able to get it all out. And she's like, and she had just had the surgery, and she's just like, I really think you were supposed to tell me that day. And I was like, I am never going to ignore a prompting again.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I these people are like having lunch, and I'm talking about, about poop and all kinds of things. And I said to them, you think that colonoscopy, this is a strange thing, because I said, you think colonoscopies are scary? You should try colon cancer. That's scary. And I was like, why am I saying this? Like, I was just like, but that stuck with me. It really did. And then when I give talks, if, something comes up that maybe is out of the topic, but I just get a problem like that, I'll just talk about it. And 9 times out of 10, somebody comes up to me after and says, did somebody tell you something? I'm like, no. But, I think sometimes there's someone in every room that needs to hear something. Like, you probably have a listener right now that just needs to hear something, whether, whatever their weird symptoms are, stop ignoring them. Heart disease is a huge killer in women. Like, this is a big problem. And when we have heart attacks, it's not like the men. The men have a heart attack and then they get whatever done, and then they may or may not have another one. When women have heart attacks, they die. And
why is that? Do you know?
I tend to think, and this is, the world according to Judy, that they probably had symptoms for a long time, but we are always told it's stress, and we always assume it's stress, and we don't blow things up enough. When, a man has chest pain, most times they tell their wife and their wife goes crazy and you got to get your stress test, or they themselves are terrified because there's been enough drilled into them about the symptoms. But even women's symptoms are different.
Yes.
We all think, it's the left arm and it's the central chest pain. Sometimes it's the inability to sleep. Sometimes it's insomnia. Sometimes it's back pain. Sometimes it's pain in both arms. Sometimes, the symptoms are just all over the place for women.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we just tend to ignore them until the big one.
My best friend died in my house last year, and she had 75% heart, like a blockage in her arteries. And she'd found out, like, she was always tired and, just no energy and kind of thing. But she 2 weeks prior to her passing, she had an episode in the house and she was passed out. And my mom called the ambulance. And when the paramedics came, they did just checked her heart.
Yeah, like an EKG or put some strips on her.
Yeah, they did that there. And they said, you need to come to the hospital. There's something wrong with your heart. We need to do further tests. And, and she was afraid and didn't want to know because both her sisters had passed on really early from heart attacks, and she didn't want to go. And 2 weeks later, she passed away in my house. She thought she was laying down watching TV and never woke up.
Oh man, that's so tough. That's so tough. Well, we call that ostrich syndrome.
Ostrich, I've never heard that.
You stick your head in the sand and you pretend it's not happening. And you pretend it's not happening.
It's the same. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. And we see that a lot. People have this and they just like, if I pretend it's not there, it's not happening.
Yeah.
You can't.
And it was such a
wish these things away.
God, I know, right? Like denial and procrastination are our worst enemies. You even though you don't want to face it, you have to if you want things to change, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And what's really sad is that no matter what we would tell her, like, hey, you got to get this checked out, she just didn't want to do it. Like she just didn't want to acknowledge it, and well, it took her life, right?
Yeah, that's so true. It didn't have to
be that way. It didn't. She had so much to offer. She was doing so much work with Salvation Army worldwide on human trafficking and doing all these speaking events. And it's such a. It still breaks my heart when I talk about it. I just like, oh my God, right?
Well, and there's there's even a big push lately to not talk about things like obesity, to not talk about the different ethnic groups that have higher risk for certain diseases. And the medical community is really pushing back and saying, you can't tell me not to tell, my African-American population that they are at a higher risk for diabetes. You can't tell me not to tell my 300-pound woman or that just stepped on a scale that she absolutely must lose weight or she's going to, have all kinds of disease. It's strange that we've become almost politically correct to the point of being impotent. And we've got to fight back on this, because if we're ignoring it, if the whole world gets ostrich syndrome, like I'm just going to pretend I'm not at risk for this, then the consequences are just too dire.
Sure. Doing a disservice to the patients when they could be proactive and avoid
Absolutely.
some of these conditions. Right. Yeah, and it's not to insult or stereotype people. It's just this is a risk factor you need to be aware of. And maybe the person doesn't know that. And once something happens, it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's so true. NPR ran a show that had a lot of doctors jumping up and down where they're like, well, we think you should somebody came on and said, well, we think you should take scales out of the doctor's office. No one should feel bad.
Somebody actually said that? Oh
yeah.
goodness.
And it was like, it's a big push because we don't want people to feel bad about what they weigh. All the doctors are going, are we being punked right now? Is this a joke?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And it was a whole show on, how to become more politically correct in healthcare. And it was just like, why? So you can die? you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think the bottom line is people have to hit their rock bottom and have had enough with their situation. I know for me, I've known for a long time that I had to change the way I eat, but we're all stubborn, and you get ingrained in these habits. I love bread. I love, good, like eat, all sorts of stuff. Well, 2 years ago, because I wasn't taking care of myself and still loving to eat bread and stuff that I couldn't eat. Well, son of a gun, my body decided to shut down, and I could no longer have gluten. My allergies become so bad that every time a minute part of gluten enters my body, the doctor told me many times it's like a poison. I'm on the floor. I have to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Like I get violently ill. But in a sense, it was actually the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to learn about food.
Yeah, it absolutely forced you to become healthier. Right? I have to say, God will give us hints. If we don't get the hint, he's just going to hit us over the head. Bam.
Okay, Kathy, you're not listening. Okay, let me do this for you.
Yeah, it's kind of like the God hammer, right?
That's right.
Like now I'm basically vegan because I can't tolerate lactose either, and I quit eating meat, and so, but it's been the best thing because I've learned so much about food. And it's not just that, but I feel, oh my God, 100 times better. No bloating, no gas, no nothing. I lost weight. I feel wonderful. I look great. I got a glow to my skin. Do I still want bread? Heck yeah, because I got to tell you, gluten-free bread is gross.
Yeah, I know. I have celiac, so I'm right there with you. The gluten-free is better than it was, but it's still not.
Yeah, that's what I have now. Celiac. It just showed up 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think, well, they'll be in a situation like yours, right, where their body is having all kinds of things. They're like, well, I can't be allergic to gluten. I've eaten gluten my whole life.
Yeah. Well, it became overload, right?
Yeah. Maybe that's the problem. But honestly, our wheat isn't like how it was. And this is why a lot of people that have not celiac, but maybe they have a gluten intolerance, they can go to other countries, like go to certain parts of Italy, and they can eat the wheat there and it not bother them. It's interesting over time how the way we have farmed our food, what our food has turned into, all of it, it's lacking the nutrients it used to have. Right. It's been changed. So our bodies, sometimes certain bodies just don't adapt to those changes. So it is fascinating to watch people say, well, I can go to this country and I can eat this, but if I come here, I can't eat, even some people that have issues with cow's milk and cheeses. Yeah. So it's lactose or, some other protein in the milk that bothers them here, or it's the, antibiotics or that the cows are getting, whatever it is that happens here, maybe doesn't happen elsewhere, and vice versa. People move here and then they say, gosh, well, I didn't used to be allergic to this, but I'm allergic to this now. And because there's so many factors. And that kind of leads me to even with supplements and medications, and this country's the world's worst for take a pill, and by the way, it gave me a side effect. Take another pill for the side effect, and pretty soon you become a chemistry project, and you got
oh man, and it's expensive. It seems like if you're going to take a pill, it would be better to have it as a supplement and something that's natural for the body, rather than having to put a bunch of synthetic stuff into your system and hope it all works and it doesn't have a nasty contraindication and side effect.
Well, yeah, even I think, Shelley, you and I have spoken about this before, but even our children's medicines, a lot of times they have dyes and they have artificial sweeteners in them. So you've got a kid who's got maybe they've got the flu, and you're giving them a syrup of some sort, medication wise, and it's got yellow number 5, or yellow number 5, it's got blue, it's got red, and by the way, it's got aspartame, and you might be doing them more harm than good.
Oh, sure, yeah.
In some countries, like yellow 5 and 6 are banned because they're related to asthma. So, people that have asthma should always avoid yellow number 5 and 6. So
Yellow number 5 is banned in 19 countries. I was just doing some research on that. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's horrible. It's so
It
bad. But
is.
yet here in the US and Canada, it's fine, right?
Yeah.
So
How
why
does
is it banned in 19 countries?
Because
that
kids
get
were
worse?
getting asthma.
Yeah.
Some of them were dying.
Oh
And
my
here
God.
we just say, oh, this is great. We can sell them more prescription inhalers.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense. The FDA in the United States is supposed to be overseeing all of this, and it's kind of like it just goes under the rug and they don't pay attention.
Well, I've got a degree in clinical research administration, so I'm very familiar with the way drugs go to market. And it's actually quite scary to think that the drug companies that pay and fund the FDA, because there's the application process, is very, very expensive to bring a drug to market. And that's because of the fees that get fed to the FDA. So the FDA is making decisions on the very hand that feeds them.
That doesn't make sense, does it?
And it's really crazy. It's a very jacked up system. I think it needs a complete overhaul. I think anyone who's had anything to do in clinical research or has worked with the FDA or the pharmaceuticals in any sense would agree. And we've kind of seen this with the vaccines and why it's caused a problem. And I'm not saying don't get your vaccines. I'm only saying that we have to, as a society, hold some checks and balances, because the companies that are paying the FDA are the same ones that, the FDA is saying this vaccine's safe. And then the government's saying, we want you to produce X amount. And now there's all this excess of the vaccine. Do we really need to keep getting them or not? Or are we getting them because there's a backlog and there's a whole bunch of extra vaccine?
Right.
We should be asking these questions.
Sure.
I'm not saying I have the answer. I'm just saying we should be asking the questions and holding some checks and balances.
So essentially, people need to be more conscious of their health and asking the right questions with their doctors. Where can women actually get a good comprehensive idea of their health? How can they get that whole picture? Because I don't think they're getting it.
No, they're not. And part of that, when they came through the legislation and said that OB-GYNs could charge for the physical. So people would go in and they'd get a pap smear and maybe a breast exam, and then they would charge the V70 code, the code for wellness. And then they say, okay, well, I've been checked out. Well, we're more than breasts and uteruses. I'm sorry. There's a lot more to us. So we've got to make sure that we're getting in with our doctors. Find a place, like Executive Medicine of Texas, or we see people from all over the globe. Get that real good head to toe. And our physicals last 5 hours. We're checking everything. But even if you don't do that every year, get that as a starting point.
Yeah.
And know what your current health status is, so then you can have a plan for yourself as an individual of what are you going to look like 5-10 years ago? What do you need to do to ensure that you're going to look 5-10 years from now the way you want to?
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
We have just a couple minutes, Judy. Can people reach out to your facility and find out, say they're geographically quite a distance away, can you provide referrals to them so that they can actually get this kind of comprehensive care?
Yeah, there's not a lot of places that do them around the country, but there are some. So they can go to emtexas, spelled out, .com. That's emtexas, emtexas.com and kind of look over all the things that we offer. We have people flying from everywhere, including Bermuda. But if they're in a particular geographic area, then we can, see what are their issues, and then is there someone that that might be able to offer something of the sort. Okay. But, I got to tell you, you absolutely have to make this investment in your health. Yes. We spend way too much money on eating out and on all these things that at the end of the day aren't going to help us live longer. They aren't going to affect us. Sometimes they affect us in a bad way, but they're not going to matter you're going to, be at your daughters and sons' weddings and see your grandkids and all these things that are really, truly important. You got to have your health. Exactly. Your health should absolutely be number one.
We put more priority on what our kitchen looks like and spend money on that than we do with ourselves. We make sure there's a good roof for our house. Well, if we don't take care of ourselves, we're going to, crumble too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you would never take your truck that you're driving and just go get the cheapest tires and put on it. You wouldn't just get a quick fix because you got to get down the road. You got to get to your destination. You have to think of your body as, the vehicle, the truck that's taking you where you want to go in life, and you got to treat it right.
So, Judy, do you folks do virtual consultations too, and maybe run tests for people in case they can't necessarily get down to your facility, but they want to know some information?
Yeah, so we can do virtual online visits, and then we can send lab orders to lab out of state. But most of the time we do require an office visit just to have the patient-doctor relationship established in the state. There are some rules and regulations for that. But we have a lot of people, they come in, they go through the process, and they've been established in the state of Texas, so they can be under the state license of that doctor, and then they can do their follow-ups virtually and different things that they need remotely.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind, what are some websites that our listeners can reference? You've got a podcast and you also have your facility there.
Yeah, sure. So emtexas.com, and the E stands for executive and M stands for medicine. So emtexas.com. And there's lots of great information there. We didn't even get into DNA testing and all kinds of things that you can read about there. And then, you're driving down the road, you want health information, you want to be entertained at the same time. The Stay Young America podcast is a great way to gain information that you can actually use, because we're always doing shows on fascinating topics, and we're always making them as interesting as possible. And we have cool guests come on in, and so sometimes they're leading scientists or best-selling authors, or sometimes they're a celebrity or that got a cool story or what have you. But our whole platform is to bring information you wouldn't otherwise get that you can take and put into your life right now, whether we're talking about the importance of laughter, which we just had somebody from Whose Line Is It Anyway on doing that, and whether we're talking about sugar, or we come up with different topics, but they're all over the place. So there's hundreds of shows. You can go in and find something that interests you, and then we do what's called medical minutes. So sometimes you just want to hear 1 minute, 1 minute, tell me something in 1 minute, and we'll talk about a recent study or something, and they're just real quick minutes.
Excellent. This has been wonderful, Judy. You are such a wonderful resource.
Oh, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for being on our show. My gosh, wonderful.
Well, it's been my pleasure. You guys are a lot of fun.
Thank you, Judy. So are you.
Yeah.
We should take this show on the road.
I agree.
Oh, wait, we just did.
There you go. Exactly.
You've been listening to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. If you want to be a guest on the show or have a topic or feedback, email us at info@tncradio.live.
Thank you for listening to another great interview on tncradio.live. And don't forget, be sure to subscribe to our podcast of Women Road Warriors. It's free. All of the material you hear on tncradio.live on our website, our broadcasts, or our podcasts are copyrighted. There can be no distribution without the express consent of tncradio.live and its partners. For inquiries, write us at info@tncradio.live.